Hi. Everybody remember Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State under Biden? Well, he came out of his bunker. He must have been high with the Ayatollah. He wrote a guest essay in the New York Times criticizing Trump with this Iran Biden bombing. I have to read it from my, well, not all of what he said, but just, he said he lashed out. Uh, He not only trashed the guest essay was in the New York Times, another turd. uh, on the essay, he said Blinken not only trashed Trump's strikes on Iran, but it criticized Trump's strategy, his entire strategy with the country, which started with him tearing up President Barack Obama's Iran nuclear deal in 2018 and culminated in Saturday strikes. Well, that's because the 2018 deal sucked. They lied and they cheated on the thing. We all know that. So he says in 2018, President Trump tore up the agreement and replaced it with nothing. That bastard. Nothing. In response, Iran accelerated its enrichment, quite likely reducing its breakout time in a matter of days or weeks. In other words, they weren't going to probably do it if he didn't tear up the agreement. So it's his fault. They were building nukes. Okay, that's the twisted thing from these goddamn beta males we have to deal with instead of alpha males. So he says Trump, in essence, was now trying to put out a fire, which he poured the gasoline because it's all Trump's fault, all his fault. You know, when he was a Stormy Daniels, that caused it. Okay. Blinken also argued that Trump jumped the gun where there was still time for diplomacy with the Iranian regime. Right, this is the regime that killed Americans. And we're going to agree with them, right? These crazy bastards, these mullahs, all that shit, right? Because Blinken felt there was time for diplomacy. It goes on to say, he says, as of now, there are conflicting messages coming from within the Trump administration. Our intelligence agencies believe Iran had not yet made a decision to weaponize it. No. They were just in these bunkers underground and all hiding, building little flower pots and stuff, right? And if and when they did weaponize, it would take 18 to 24 months to produce an explosive device, according to some estimates. In other words, as Blinken says, there's still time for diplomacy to work. And it wasn't really the emergency that Trump portrayed it to be. He says experts that I've spoken to had real doubts about the ability of the bombs that we used on them, right? Experts, all Democrats, most of which never served in a war, okay? And those penetration bombs, they may not have penetrated. Well, you know what? They probably killed every goddamn Iranian scientist that was hiding underground too. That's my view. I'm not an expert though. It goes on to say that even though he was against it, now that we did drop the bombs, maybe it's okay. He hopes so. I mean, I'm so sick of these goddamn wussy pussies. This all started a long time ago. You folks probably don't remember the Vietnam War, which I served during that era. Anybody remember Hanoi Jane? Jane Fonda, the actress. She went over to Hanoi, who had our prisoners of war. We were still fighting with them, right? Fighting Vietnam and all. And she visited, and they greeted her with open arms. And there was a picture of her wearing a North Vietnamese Army pith helmet, sitting on an ACAC gun, anti-aircraft gun, smiling for the camera. That, folks, was treason. That was treason. She should have been arrested as soon as she came back to the States and went on a trial, okay? But that all went away because Lyndon Johnson was a Democrat, okay? Once you have Democrats in, you got wussy shit in, okay? And ever since that, the treason thing went away. Well, I'm happy to say that word's starting to pop up again. A lot of people in the Trump administration are using it. One person said the comments about defending Iran, they're treasonous. So I'm finally glad to see we're getting on that page. I can't wait to see when the trials start with that. But these people, they're just sickening. Absolutely sickening. This guy could cure Trump can cure cancer and poverty and everything, and they'd still say, "Well, he got a lot of help from other people. It wasn't his thing." They're despicable. And when I call the Democrats the enemy, I'm not being facetious. I'm not exaggerating. That's putting it mildly, really. Stay tuned.